The day my life changed started out like any other. The sky was clear, the sun was shining, and the city buzzed with its usual energy. I drove my sleek black sports car through the bustling streets, feeling the powerful engine roar beneath me. Despite the luxury that surrounded me, a profound sense of emptiness gnawed at my soul. My parents' tragic accident had left me a vast fortune, but it had also left me profoundly alone. My mansion on the outskirts of the city was filled with every conceivable comfort, yet it felt hollow without anyone to share it with. As I navigated through the busy streets, something caught my eye. An elderly woman, frail and weary, was rummaging through a dumpster. Her clothes were tattered, and she looked like she hadn't had a decent meal in days. The sight stirred something deep within me, a pang of compassion I hadn't felt in a long time. I pulled over to the curb, my heart racing as I approached her. "Excuse me, ma'am," I called out gently. "Can I help you with something?" She turned to look at me, her eyes filled with a mix of suspicion and vulnerability. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm Thomas," I said, offering a reassuring smile. "I just want to help. What's your name?" "Maria," she replied, her guard slowly lowering. "I've been living on the streets for months now, ever since I was evicted from my apartment. I have no one to turn to." Her words hit me hard. The thought of someone being so alone and in need was unbearable. Without a second thought, I made an impulsive decision. "Maria, I have a garage that I don't use. It's not much, but it's warm and safe. You can stay there until you find something better." Maria's eyes welled up with tears, and for a moment, she seemed at a loss for words. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Absolutely," I said, my voice firm with conviction. "Please let me help you." She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you, Thomas. You have no idea how much this means to me." We drove back to my mansion in silence, the weight of the moment hanging in the air. I led her to the garage, which was more spacious and comfortable than most apartments. There was a bed, a small bathroom, and even a makeshift kitchen area. It wasn't much, but it was a start. This is amazing," Maria said, her voice filled with awe as she took in her new surroundings. "I can't believe you're doing this for me." "It's the least I can do," I replied. "No one should have to live on the streets. Make yourself at home, Maria." As I watched her settle in, a sense of warmth and fulfillment washed over me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was doing something meaningful. Little did I know, this act of compassion would mark the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would change both our lives forever. Later that evening, I brought Maria a warm meal from the mansion's kitchen. She looked at the food, her eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you, Thomas," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "You've given me hope when I had none left." "It's my pleasure, Maria," I said, sitting down next to her. "Tell me more about yourself. How did you end up here?" She sighed, her expression turning somber. "Life has a way of throwing curveballs," she began. "I used to be an artist, you know. Had my own studio and everything. But then, life got complicated, and I lost everything." As she spoke, I listened intently, feeling a deep connection forming between us. Despite the differences in our circumstances, we shared a common understanding of loss and loneliness. And in that moment, I knew that helping Maria was just the beginning of something much bigger. Our conversation stretched into the night, and by the time I left the garage, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Maria's presence had already begun to fill the void in my heart, and I was determined to help her rebuild her life, no matter what it took. The days turned into weeks, and Maria gradually settled into her new home in my garage. Every morning, I would bring her breakfast, and we would sit together, sharing stories and getting to know each other better. I found myself looking forward to these moments, her warmth and wisdom offering a stark contrast to the cold isolation I had grown accustomed to. Maria's presence brought a sense of life to the mansion. She insisted on keeping the garage tidy, taking pride in her little space. She would often say, "Thomas, just because I'm staying here temporarily doesn't mean I can't make it feel like home." One sunny afternoon, as we sat on the patio overlooking the garden, Maria shared a part of her past that had long been buried. "Thomas, did I ever tell you about my days as an artist?" Maria asked, her eyes shining with a nostalgic glow. "You mentioned it briefly," I replied, intrigued. "I'd love to hear more about it." Maria smiled, her face lighting up as she began her story. "I used to have a small studio downtown. Painting was my passion, my escape from the harsh realities of life. I would lose myself in the colors and strokes, creating worlds on canvas. "Why did you stop?" I asked gently, sensing the sadness in her voice. "Life happened," she said, sighing. "I fell in love with a man named Victor. He was charming and seemed genuinely interested in my work. But he turned out to be involved in shady dealings. I got caught up in his mess and lost everything: my studio, my home, and eventually my will to paint." Her words hung in the air, heavy with regret and pain. I felt a surge of protectiveness and a deep desire to help her reclaim her lost passion. "Maria," I said softly, "you don't have to give up on your dreams. What if I helped you get back into painting?" Her eyes widened in surprise. "Thomas, you've already done so much for me. I can't ask for more." "You're not asking, I'm offering," I insisted. "Let's turn that garage into a studio. I'll get you all the supplies you need. You deserve to do what you love." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she reached out to squeeze my hand. "Thank you, Thomas. You've given me more than a place to stay. You've given me hope." The next day, I had the garage transformed into a small studio. Easels, canvases, brushes, and paints filled the space, creating a vibrant and creative environment. Maria's eyes sparkled with gratitude as she stepped into her new sanctuary. "This is incredible," she whispered, running her fingers over the brushes. "I can't believe this is happening." "It's all yours," I said, smiling. "Now let's see some of that magic you've been talking about." Maria hesitated at first, her strokes shaky and uncertain. But as the days passed, her confidence grew. Watching her paint was like witnessing a flower bloom. Her movements became more assured, and the garage was soon filled with stunning landscapes, portraits, and abstract pieces bursting with emotion and color. One evening, as I watched her work on a particularly striking piece, she turned to me and said, "Thomas, you've given me a gift I thought I had lost forever." "I can't thank you enough." "You don't need to thank me," I replied. "Seeing you happy and fulfilled is all the thanks I need." Our friendship deepened with each passing day. We spent hours talking about art, music, and life. Maria's stories were filled with wisdom and humor, and I found myself learning from her resilience and strength. One night, as we sat under the stars, Maria looked at me thoughtfully. "Thomas, you've done so much for me. But what about you? You always seem so lonely." I sighed, contemplating her words. "I guess I am," I admitted. "I have all this wealth, but it doesn't fill the emptiness inside. Meeting you has made me realize how much I crave real connections, genuine friendships." Maria smiled gently. "Sometimes the people who come into our lives when we least expect it are the ones who make the biggest impact." Her words resonated deeply with me. Maria had not only found a home in my garage, but she had also found a place in my heart. Our friendship was a testament to the power of compassion and the beauty of human connection. As I watched her paint, I realized that in helping Maria rediscover her passion, I had found my own sense of purpose and fulfillment. Life at the mansion settled into a comfortable routine. Maria and I had established a rhythm, one that involved daily chats over breakfast, art sessions in the garage studio, and evenings spent discussing everything from philosophy to our favorite books. Yet despite our growing closeness, I sensed that Maria was holding something back. There were moments when her gaze would grow distant, as if she were lost in painful memories. One rainy afternoon, as the sound of raindrops pattered against the windows, Maria and I were sitting in the cozy living room. The fireplace crackled warmly, casting a golden glow across the room. Maria was unusually quiet, her hands resting in her lap as she stared into the flames. "Maria," I said gently, breaking the silence, "I can tell there's something on your mind. You know you can talk to me about anything, right?" She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "Thomas, you've been so kind to me. I owe you the truth." Taking a deep breath, Maria began to share the story she had kept hidden for so long. "Years ago, I was a well-known painter. My work was displayed in prestigious galleries, and I was on the path to success. Then I met Victor. He was charming and seemed genuinely interested in my art. I fell for him, not realizing the danger he represented." "What happened?" I asked, leaning forward, my heart aching for her. "Victor was involved in illegal activities," Maria continued, her voice trembling. "I didn't know at first. By the time I found out, it was too late. He used my art to launder money. When the authorities closed in, I was implicated. I lost everything: my reputation, my studio, and my home." Victor vanished, leaving me to face the consequences alone. I felt a surge of anger toward Victor and deep empathy for Maria. "That must have been incredibly difficult for you," I said softly. "It was," Maria admitted. "I had to leave everything behind. I became a ghost, hiding from my past, trying to survive day by day. I thought I could never paint again, that my passion had been tainted by the betrayal." "But you started painting again," I pointed out, glancing at one of her beautiful landscapes hanging on the wall. "Thanks to you," Maria said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You gave me a chance to reclaim my life. But there's more to my story, something I need to tell you." I nodded, urging her to continue. "Before Victor, I was married to a man named David. He was my first love and my greatest supporter. We had a son together, but our lives were torn apart by tragedy. David died in a car accident, and our son was taken from me under complicated circumstances. I've spent years trying to find him, hoping for a chance to reunite." My heart pounded as I listened, feeling a strange connection to her story. "Maria, what happened to your son?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "But I've never stopped searching for him. I believe he's out there somewhere, living his life, not knowing that his mother still loves him." I reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Maria, we'll find him. I promise you that." Over the next few days, I dedicated myself to uncovering more about Maria's past. Using my resources and contacts, I delved into the archives, searching for any leads that might help us find her son. The more I learned about Maria's life, the more I admired her resilience and strength. One evening, as Maria was working on a new painting, I walked into the garage studio with a stack of old documents and photographs. "Maria, I think I found something," I said, my voice filled with excitement. She looked up, hope and fear mingling in her eyes. "What is it, Thomas?" I handed her a photograph of a young boy with a familiar smile. "This was taken years ago. I believe this is your son." Maria gasped, her hands trembling as she held the photo. "Thomas, this is him. This is my David." I sat beside her, feeling a wave of emotions. "We'll keep searching, Maria. We'll find him and bring him back to you." As we continued to piece together the fragments of her past, Maria's spirit seemed to lift. She painted with renewed vigor, pouring her emotions onto the canvas. Our friendship deepened, built on trust and a shared mission. One night, as we sat together under the stars, Maria looked at me with a newfound sense of peace. "Thomas, you've given me hope when I thought all was lost. I can't thank you enough." "Maria, you've taught me so much about strength and perseverance," I replied, feeling a deep bond between us. "Together, we'll face whatever comes our way." In that moment, I realized that Maria's story was not just about uncovering secrets from the past. It was about healing, redemption, and the power of human connection. And as we embarked on this journey together, I knew that we were no longer alone. Our journey to uncover Maria's past and find her son brought us closer than ever. With each passing day, the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, and we were one step closer to reuniting her with her lost child. The revelations about her life had filled me with a mixture of emotions, but I never expected the bombshell that was about to drop. One crisp morning, I received a call from one of the private investigators I had hired. His voice was tinged with excitement and urgency. "Mr. Miller, I believe we found something significant. Could you come down to the office immediately?" I quickly made my way to the investigator's office, my heart pounding with anticipation. When I arrived, he handed me a thick file. "We've found records of Maria's son, but there's something else, something I think you need to see for yourself." As I opened the file, my eyes scanned through the documents, landing on a birth certificate. My breath caught in my throat as I read the names listed. Maria Hernandez, mother; David Miller, father. My father. I felt the world spin around me. Maria's son was my half-brother. I needed to tell Maria, but I had to process this myself first. I drove back to the mansion in a daze, the weight of the revelation pressing heavily on my chest. Later that evening, I found Maria in her studio, lost in her painting. She looked up as I entered, concern etched on her face. "Thomas, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Maria," I began, my voice trembling, "I need to talk to you. It's about your son." She set her brush down, her eyes wide with fear and hope. "What is it, Thomas? Did you find him?" I took a deep breath and sat down beside her. "Maria," the investigator found some documents. I need to show you something. I handed her the file, watching as she opened it with trembling hands. Her eyes scanned the birth certificate, and then she looked up at me, her face pale. Thomas, this can't be. David Miller. That's your father's name, she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Yes, I said softly. Maria, my father was David Miller. That means, I'm your son. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Maria let out a sob, covering her mouth with her hand. Oh my God, Thomas. My boy, my son. I moved closer, taking her hands in mine. Maria, I had no idea. All these years we've been looking for each other without knowing we were right here. She pulled me into a tight embrace, her tears soaking my shoulder. I lost you once and now I found you again. I can't believe it. As we held each other, the enormity of the revelation settled in. We had been brought together by fate, and the emptiness I had always felt was finally starting to fill. We sat together, talking late into the night, sharing memories and piecing together the fragments of our shared history. The next day we decided to visit my father's old study, hoping to find more clues about our past. The room had remained untouched since his passing, a shrine to a man I barely knew. As we sifted through his belongings, we found letters and photographs that painted a picture of a loving father and husband. Thomas, look at this, Maria said, holding up a letter. It was addressed to her, written in my father's handwriting. She read it aloud, her voice trembling. My dearest Maria, I hope this letter finds you well. I am writing to tell you how much I miss you and our son. I made a terrible mistake, and I want to make things right. Please come back to me. Love, David. Tears streamed down her face as she finished reading. He wanted us to be together. He wanted to make things right. I squeezed her hand. And now we have a chance to honor his wishes. We're together again, Maria. We're family. We spent the following days reconnecting on a deeper level. Maria shared stories about my father, giving me a glimpse into the man he was. She told me about their love, their dreams, and the hardships they faced. It was like discovering a missing part of myself, and I cherished every moment. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Maria turned to me with a smile. Thomas, I want you to know that finding you has been the greatest blessing of my life. I never thought I would get this chance. I feel the same way, Maria, I replied. I've been searching for something my whole life, and now I know it was you. You filled the void in my heart. She reached out and held my hand. We have a lot to catch up on, and I'm looking forward to every moment. Thank you for never giving up on me. And thank you for being brave enough to share your story, I said, squeezing her hand. We have a future to build together as a family. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey of uncovering our past had brought us closer than ever, and I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Maria had given me the gift of family, and I was determined to cherish and protect it with all my heart. The days following our discovery were filled with a mixture of joy and anticipation. Maria and I were finally beginning to understand the depth of our connection, but one significant piece of the puzzle was still missing. Maria's long-lost daughter. Driven by the hope of reuniting Maria with her, I redoubled my efforts, hiring additional private investigators and utilizing every resource at my disposal. One afternoon, while I was working in my study, the phone rang. It was one of the investigators. Mr. Miller, I have good news. We found Maria's daughter. My heart raced. Where is she? She's living in a small town a few hours away. We've made contact and she's willing to meet. I thanked him and immediately went to find Maria. She was in her studio, as usual, lost in her painting. The sight of her, so peaceful and immersed in her art, made me pause for a moment. This woman had been through so much, and now she was on the brink of another life-changing event. Maria, I said gently, stepping into the room. She looked up, paintbrush in hand, a question in her eyes. Thomas, what is it? We found her. We found your daughter. The paintbrush slipped from her fingers, and she covered her mouth with her hands, tears springing to her eyes. Oh, Thomas, are you sure? Is it really her? I nodded, smiling. Yes, Maria. She wants to meet you. We can go to her as soon as you're ready. Maria stood up, her legs shaking. I'm ready now. Let's go. The drive to the small town was filled with a charged silence, both of us lost in our thoughts. I glanced at Maria from time to time, her face a mixture of hope and fear. When we finally arrived, the investigator led us to a quaint little house on a quiet street. We stood at the door and Maria took a deep breath before knocking. The door opened and a woman in her early 50s stood there, her eyes widening as she saw us. She was beautiful, with features that reminded me of Maria. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling. Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, my love, it's me, it's really me." The woman stepped forward, and they embraced, both of them crying. I felt a lump in my throat, witnessing their reunion. After a moment they pulled back, and Maria introduced me. "This is Thomas, your brother." Her daughter's eyes widened, and she smiled through her tears. "I'm so happy to meet you, Thomas." We spent the rest of the day together, talking and catching up. Maria's daughter, Alina, told us about her life, the struggles she had faced, and the family she had built. She had 2 children of her own who were eager to meet their newfound grandmother and uncle. Over the next few weeks, we visited Alina and her family often. Each visit strengthened the bond between us, turning strangers into family. Maria seemed to grow younger with each passing day, the weight of her past lifting as she embraced her new life. One evening, as we sat around Alina's dining table, Maria turned to me, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thomas, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done. You've given me my family back." I smiled, squeezing her hand. "Maria, you've given me just as much. I found a family I never knew I had. We're in this together." Alina, who had been listening, nodded. "Thomas, you've brought us all together. You've given us a chance to heal and build something beautiful. Thank you." As we continued to talk, laugh, and share stories, I felt a deep sense of contentment. This was what I had been missing all those years, a family, a sense of belonging. The emptiness I had once felt was now filled with love and connection. In the weeks that followed, we worked together to bring Alina and her family to the mansion. We remodeled several rooms to accommodate them, creating a vibrant, lively environment. Maria and Alina spent hours in the studio, painting and sharing their love of art. The children brought laughter and joy into the house, filling it with a warmth that had been absent for so long. One day, as we were all gathered in the garden for a family picnic, Maria looked around, her eyes shining with happiness. "Thomas, look at what we've built. This is more than I ever dreamed of." I nodded, feeling a sense of pride and fulfillment. "Yes, Maria, we've come a long way. And this is just the beginning." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the garden, I realized that our journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead, but we would face them together as a family. And with each passing day, I felt more grateful for the compassion that had brought Maria into my life and for the family we had become. With the joy of our newfound family settling into our daily lives, there was still a lingering shadow that needed to be addressed: Maria's past with Victor. The man who had once been a significant part of her life was still out there, and the memories of his betrayal were a constant undercurrent in her newfound happiness. One evening, as we were all sitting in the living room after dinner, I noticed Maria was unusually quiet. She was staring into the fire, her face etched with worry. "Maria," I said gently, sitting down next to her, "what's on your mind?" She sighed, looking up at me with tired eyes. "Thomas, there's something I need to confront. It's about Victor." Alina, who was sitting across from us, leaned forward. "Mom, you don't have to talk about it if you're not ready." Maria shook her head. "No, I need to. It's time to face the past, once and for all." Over the next few days, we made plans to find Victor. With the help of our investigators, we tracked him down to a nearby city where he was running an art gallery. The thought of confronting him made me anxious, but I knew it was necessary for Maria's peace of mind. The day we decided to visit the gallery, Maria, Alina, and I drove together. The atmosphere in the car was tense, but there was also a sense of determination. Maria was ready to face the man who had caused her so much pain and reclaim her story. As we walked into the gallery, the air was thick with the smell of paint and varnish. Victor was there, talking to a potential buyer. When he saw us, his expression shifted from surprise to recognition, and finally to unease. "Maria," he said, his voice strained. "What are you doing here?" Maria stood tall, her voice steady. "I came to settle things, Victor. It's time we talked." He glanced around nervously, then motioned for us to follow him to a private office. Once inside, we sat down, the tension palpable. "Victor," Maria began, "I've come to terms with my past, but I need to know why you did what you did. Why did you betray me?" Victor sighed, running a hand through his hair. Maria, I was young and foolish. I got involved with people I shouldn't have, made choices that were more about greed than love. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you. Elena, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. You took advantage of my mother's talent and her trust. Do you have any idea what she's been through because of you? Victor looked genuinely remorseful. I know, and I'm deeply sorry. If I could take it back, I would. Maria nodded, tears in her eyes. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Victor, but I needed to hear you say it. I needed closure. I reached out and took Maria's hand. You deserve to put this behind you, Maria. You've built a beautiful life, and we're all here for you. Victor looked at me, then at Maria. If there's anything I can do to make amends, please let me know. Maria took a deep breath, her resolve clear. The best thing you can do is stay out of my life. I've moved on and I intend to keep moving forward. With that, we left the gallery, the weight of the confrontation lifting off Maria's shoulders. As we drove back home, there was a sense of relief and a newfound strength in Maria. That evening, as we sat in the garden, Maria turned to me and Elena. Thank you for being with me today. I feel like a chapter of my life has finally closed. Elena hugged her mother. We're proud of you, Mom. You've come so far and we're here for you every step of the way. I nodded, smiling at the two women who had become the cornerstone of my life. This is just the beginning, Maria. We have so much to look forward to. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, I felt a deep sense of peace. Maria had faced her past, and together, we had emerged stronger. The future was bright, filled with hope, love, and the promise of new beginnings. With Maria's past finally laid to rest, our family began to flourish in ways I had never imagined. The mansion, once a symbol of my loneliness, was now filled with laughter, love, and the vibrant energy of new life. The days were brighter, the nights were warmer, and each moment felt like a precious gift. One morning, as I sat on the terrace with a cup of coffee, I watched Maria and Elena in the garden. They were planting flowers, their hands covered in soil, their faces lit up with joy. Elena's children were playing nearby, their laughter echoing through the air. Good morning, Thomas, Maria called out, waving a dirty hand in my direction. Morning, Maria, I replied, smiling. Need any help? She laughed, shaking her head. We've got it covered, but thank you. Why don't you join us anyway? I set my coffee down and walked over to join them. As I knelt beside Maria, helping her plant a row of daisies, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. This was what life was all about, simple moments shared with those we love. Later that day, we gathered in the newly remodeled studio. Maria and Elena had been working on a joint exhibition, and today was the day we would see their finished pieces. The room was filled with canvases, each one a testament to their talent and passion. Maria took my hand, leading me to a large painting of a sunlit garden. This one's for you, Thomas. It represents the new beginnings you've given all of us. I was deeply moved. Maria, it's beautiful. Thank you. Elena joined us, holding a smaller canvas. And this one is for you, Mom. It's a portrait of our family. The painting depicted all of us together, smiling and happy. Tears welled up in Maria's eyes as she embraced her daughter. Elena, it's perfect. Thank you, my love. As the weeks passed, our lives settled into a joyful routine. Elena's children filled the house with their energy, and Maria and I found new ways to connect and support each other. We decided to open the mansion to the community, hosting art workshops and charity events to give back to those in need. One sunny afternoon, we held our first charity event. The garden was filled with people from all walks of life, eager to see Maria and Elena's work and support our cause. There were laughter, music, and a sense of unity that warmed my heart. As I walked through the crowd, I spotted a familiar face. It was Victor. He approached me, looking nervous but determined. Thomas, he said quietly. I wanted to come today to support Maria. I hope that's okay. I nodded, extending my hand. It's okay, Victor. Thank you for coming. He shook my hand, relief washing over his face. I've been thinking a lot about what Maria said. I want to make things right, even if it's just a small step. Maria noticed us talking and walked over. Victor, she said, her voice calm but firm. Thank you for coming. I hope you're sincere about changing. He nodded earnestly. I am, Maria. I promise. She gave him a small smile. Then let's focus on the future. We're all here to build something better. As the event continued, I felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was more than I had ever hoped for: a family, a community, and a purpose. Later that evening, as we sat together on the terrace, Alina's children playing nearby, Maria turned to me, her eyes reflecting the stars above. "Thomas, I never imagined my life could be so full of love and happiness. Thank you for everything." I took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Maria, you brought this family together. You're the heart of it all. We're all here because of you." Alina joined us, her face glowing with contentment. "To new beginnings," she said, raising a glass of wine. "To new beginnings," Maria and I echoed, clinking our glasses together. As we sat there, surrounded by the people we loved, I realized that the mansion had become more than just a home. It was a sanctuary, a place of healing and hope, where we could all grow and thrive together. The emptiness I had once felt was now filled with the love and laughter of family, and I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. In the end, it was Maria's compassion that had brought us all together, creating a family out of strangers and turning our lives into a beautiful tapestry of love, resilience, and new beginnings. And as I looked around at the faces of those I cherished, I knew that we had found something truly special, something worth holding on to forever.